On today's episode...
Blood is part cells and part liquid. They put it in very, very high-tech machines now. Let's use the most recent, right? The COVID-19 testing. It's one of the best hopes for treatment. We're trying to save people with convalescent plasma, it's called. Most diets, unfortunately, they can help you lose weight quickly, but they're unsustainable. A lot of good food here in Indiana, not just corn. I've given it a lot of thought since we talked. My answer is going to be unusual because my favorite ice cream is probably...
Yum! Delicious. Skinny. Hungry. Cake. Fat. Scale. Nutrition. Fitness. Strength. Longevity. Calories. Body image. Craving. Lose weight.
But what does it all mean?
Hungry. Adjective. Having a strong craving or desire. Stunt girl. Noun. One who takes calculated risks to yield extraordinary or magical outcomes.
You're listening to the Hungry Stunt Girl podcast.
Here's your host, Heidi Germain Schnapoff.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Hungry Stunt Girl podcast, episode 9. I am Heidi Germain Schnapoff, professional stuntwoman for film and television. And today, I'm going to talk to you about a little road trip I took cross country. I took a road trip and I camped out and visited some parks and did some mountain bike riding and paddleboarded down some river in Utah that I can't remember right now. That was fun. A little terrifying, but fun nonetheless. On my way back, I had the pleasure of actually safely visiting today's guest in their home in Indiana. Dr. Charlie Miraglia was such a gracious host, and while I was at his house, he was just incredibly gracious and fed me food and was super humble about his accolades, all of which I will not be able to get through in just one episode. It was a very long list of accomplishments, but in this episode, I do refer to him as a chubby kid. I meant no offense by the word chubby. I do not think, I am not shaming chubby kids for what it's worth. I think it's perfectly fine for a kid to have a little extra padding for the most part, as long as you're healthy about it and you don't just cram Twinkies and Dr. Pepper down your gullet. But I was merely referring to the fact that he had struggled a bit when he was a kid, being a bigger kid, and how that was inevitably going to affect his health long term, especially with his genetic propensity toward having high cholesterol. We do talk a bit about COVID-19 and how blood can be the key to one form of treatment that he has actually seen work. He's a blood doctor, basically, specialist blood pathologist, and now he works more on the business side and does a lot of consulting. And I thought he would be a great guest to have on to maybe talk about COVID-19 stuff that he's been privy to seeing and maybe explain a little bit about how all that testing works and, some basic questions that people want to know, something that's not too controversial. So we talk about that a little bit. He talks about the treatments that he's seen and how they've worked and how, they're working currently in the hospitals he works in Indiana. And we start talking about diet and his ideal diet and recommendations. And there's definitely research out there on how to safely do a ketogenic diet, but Dr. Miraglia explains why he thinks you should be cautious when starting any sort of diet or fad diet, especially the keto diet. One of the more sustainable diets he does actually recommend is the Mediterranean diet, which was lucky for me because that diet includes fats like olive oil, and I really wanted to talk to you guys today about Olive Oil Jones. Olive Oil Jones is a company that my friend Max Jenkins folks started a while ago, and I originally just bought it because I wanted to support him and his family, but after trying it, I fell in love with it. And they sell early harvest, unfiltered, imported olive oils from hand-picked groves that the family's known them for years and years, and so that's why they decided to do business with them. And after doing a little research of my own and after becoming addicted to the flavor of this olive oil, I found that early harvest oils actually have a lot of, or all of the antioxidants and polyphenols that do myriad good things for the body, so totally a bonus there. And recently I contacted them and was like, hey, I very much so want to talk about you guys on my show, and would you be able to give the people that listen a discount if I talk about it? They were like, yeah, totally. So if anyone out there wants to try it, you can go to oliveoiljones.com, and your first order will be 10% off if you use the code HUNGRY. Pretty easy. So I get to talk about the olive oil that I love. You get a discount, and it's super high quality and delicious. So there you have it. Without further ado, let's just get into talking to Dr. Miraglia, who is one of my favorite people and just so happens to be my uncle.
Hungry. Stunt Girl.
Today's guest is a Board Certified Clinical Pathologist, Transfusion Medicine Specialist, and Healthcare Executive. He has over 25 years of leadership experience in a variety of clinical and commercial environments, including blood centers, hospitals, integrated delivery systems, academic tertiary care centers, and independent laboratories. He has been a consultant for a variety of healthcare companies and currently on the board of Versity Blood Center of Indiana. He also serves as a clinical education consultant for Obris Education. You can call him Dr. Blood, but I call him Uncle Charlie. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Charlie Miraglia. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me on my podcast. It's pretty cool. Charlie is one of the most kind, smart, loving, food-loving individuals that I know, and I thought it only fit to have him on my podcast and ask some questions that a lot of people have been asking about, in addition to having on celebrities and nutritionists. I think it's kind of cool to get all sorts of medical and informational people on, and it's just a bonus that we're related. So
there you go.
Here we go. Well, why don't you start by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and your background and where you're from and kind of what led you to your path of medicine and food.
Yep. Well, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, obviously the same area that you did. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was in high school, and then even in college. I liked science and math, so I was a biology major, a chemistry major, switching, flip-flopping. Ended up doing research. Went to McGill University in Montreal and did research, and then I went to Philadelphia, did research. It led me to Duke, where I finally went to graduate school. But the graduate research I did led me into my interest in medicine. So I wanted to get back to research, but I switched course a little bit and went to medical school at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And then I did my residency and fellowship training at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. I was there for another 4 years, lots of 4-year blocks in my life. I think I was 32 when I finally finished all my training. But I am a clinical pathologist, and a transfusion medicine specialist is my subspecialty. So it's basically blood, all things blood. Blood transfusion especially. So
what got you so you said 4-year blocks. Did things that you were researching, or what led you to blood?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I was doing more very, very basic science when I started at right after college, but there was so much cancer research going on that sort of gets you into the health side of things. But I actually, and this is true of most of life, it's all about mentors, right? Mm-hmm. So it's someone that influences you in a way that pushes you in one direction or another. Not makes you go there, but it's that spark that sends you down that path. And I had an MD, PhD research guy that I worked in his lab, and he was a blood clotting specialist.
Oh, wow.
So it's a bleeding and thrombotic disorders. And that's where we were doing so much research. He was talking about his patients, and I was telling him how the experiments were going in the lab. And we did that day after day. And he finally said, you really ought to go to medical school so you get both sides of this, right? Wow. I mean, I knew the science, but you only appreciate the medicine when you're a doctor.
And where was that?
That was at Duke.
Okay.
When I was at Duke.
So it was early.
Yeah. And then I went to Wake Forest to medical school because I love North Carolina. Okay. But it was good to get away from Duke. Duke is an interesting place, a wonderful university, with lots of crazy people.
Oh, yeah.
Like you might have imagined. A lot of those places, Harvards and the Dukes of the world. So Wake was a wonderful experience. And then I thought I'd circle back and get back to research, but what I found is I really liked patient care, and and I chose a specialty that would allow me to see patients and deal with people, but just not too much. I only like them so much. Right? I mean,
well, that's good that you get to see people and then back into that as well.
Yeah.
And then what happened? So you decided to go that field, and then
all that training led me to, when I was finally finished, you're never really finished, that's why they call it practicing medicine, right? You just keep practicing. I had an opportunity to move to Louisville, Kentucky for a multi-hospital system that the job was perfect for me. I mean, it was almost like they came up with a job description, and I was the only one who was going to fit it because
Wow.
I ran the transfusion service for all the hospitals and ran the coagulation laboratory for all the hospitals, and they needed someone with both of those skill sets, which I had. I was there for a couple of years, and I loved it. But again, as fate comes into play, a good friend of mine from when I was in Virginia moved to Indianapolis, and then they needed someone with those same skills in Indianapolis. Again,
cool.
lightning striking twice.
Wow.
And it's funny because I said, I'm not moving to Indy. I love Louisville. I love my job. I bought a house and all that stuff. I was finally settling down somewhere. And here it was 2 years after I started. And he said, well, just come up and see the family and pretend, but he lured me.
Yeah.
Long story short, I ended up in Indy in 1995. I've been here ever since.
Oh, wow. So 95, and so you're working in the hospital, basically doing the same thing, or?
No, I did for a number of years. I ran those departments in the hospital, and then for about 3 years, and then I became the department head of the pathology department, which is over all the labs. Right, I was running two of them, the blood transfusion part and the coag part. Now I ran all of it, and then I ended up being recruited away from that system by an independent laboratory that needed a new CEO.
Oh.
Right? So I became the president and CEO of an independent laboratory in Indiana. Okay. So now leaning more toward the business side. This is where the career takes a change, because the more administration and business you do, the less you're practicing medicine day to day.
Right.
And you get to a point where you have to choose. Right. You can
imagine.
Very smart people can do both for a while, but it's hard to do them as a career, to do everything.
Right.
So I sort of went down the administrative path at one point when I ended up selling that laboratory, because again, I worked for a board of directors, right? I was the CEO of the lab, and it was at a time when the big labs, the LabCorp and Quest and those big national and global labs, they were buying smaller labs, and then that's how they make they're shareholder driven, right? They're publicly traded companies, so they buy a lab, they can do the testing in one of their larger labs less expensively, so they roll it all up.
So where you would get, let's say they send blood work to the lab, right? So you get the blood work done at any place that has someone who will draw the blood, like a phlebotomist that'll send it to it. So it could be the hospital, it could be like an urgent care place, but just the lab is independent. Or do some of the hospitals work with labs like that? I just don't know how that works.
It's a complicated business, but hospitals always have their own lab because they need testing done. The emergency testing has to be done, right? You come in with chest pain, you have to be able to do that testing right there. So there's always going to be testing on site in a hospital. But we've gotten to a point, because it's so expensive, healthcare is so expensive and it's so costly to do that testing, the big labs have basically made deals with the hospitals where they manage, it's the Quest or LabCorp's employees, their employees inside the hospital doing the testing at the hospital, but anything that doesn't need to be done there gets sent back to the mothership lab. There's a handful of labs around the country where they do big automated testing with robots. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. That drives down the cost per test and makes their shareholders very happy, because everybody wins in that.
Got it. And and more convenient too, because there are more labs, it sounds like.
Right. And the patient service centers, they have all over everywhere. Like in every small town, there's a couple of them that they make it convenient for the patient, right? Because everybody needs to get blood work done on a regular basis, whether it's routine cholesterol testing or whatever.
So what kinds of things would you, so you studied I'm guessing, what to do with the blood when, I'm just trying to get into to understand what happens when you give your blood you put them in all these vials and they send it to your lab. Do they swirl it around in different machines for different tests? There's so many tests. I just had blood drawn, and I think I got 12 different tests. So it goes to a lab like you would own, and then what happens then? Do they just do different? How does that work? How do they go into your blood without getting into? Obviously, you studied it for blocks of 4 years at a time, so you don't want to get too detailed. But is each, let's say you do a lipids test, there's a different type of? Is it all different types of tests that they go through, or do you put something in the blood, or do you I'm picturing it in a centrifuge, flipping around? Is that really?
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you're going to test something that's in the liquid part of the blood, right, the plasma it's called, or even the serum, again, we won't go down that rabbit trail, but that has to be centrifuged because you have to get the cellular component, right? Blood is part cells and part liquid, And then there's all kinds of proteins in the liquid. So it depends on what you're looking for. Is the simple answer to your question. And it goes into departments based on, are you looking for something infectious, right? So it might have to go to the microbiology lab where they might actually put it on a plate to see if anything grows out of it.
Oh, wow.
Right. Or they put it in very, very high-tech machines now. Let's use the most recent, right? The COVID-19 testing. When you hear about testing for that, they're actually using what's called PCR, which they're looking for the genetic makeup of the virus so they can identify that it's actually there. That's one way. Then you'll hear about the antibody test, right?
Right.
When we're, as humans...
Is that a blood test?
It's still a blood test. The antibodies are in the liquid portion of your blood. And we can test, by different methods, we can test to see whether or not you've made an antibody to whatever it is. The influenza virus, the COVID-19, SARS virus. There's that testing. And again, it's never 100% foolproof. Nothing is, right? There's always chances of false negatives and false positives. But we do in the laboratory business, let's just get back to what I do, we do our best to ensure that it's that you're getting the specificity, which means you're looking at what you thought you were looking at, and then sensitivity, you have to dial that in a way that you'll be most likely to identify it when it's in a sample at the right time. That's the problem with viruses. Just because you're infected with it, it continues to grow inside your cells. So there's a window period where you may have it, but we can't see it yet. Right?
And that's usually
but it's a very small window. Yeah, that's all those incubation periods, right? When you're out with people and you're exposed to it, it's a while before you get the symptoms, and it's because it's reproducing inside of you. But we get more and more sensitive with all this genetic type testing, and it's all automated now. So the machines, while the machines may be big, everything that we used to do in multiple rooms over multiple days now can be done by a machine in minutes to hours.
Wow. But so the coronavirus itself, that test is like a mucous membrane test, right?
The nasal swab, yes.
Okay, it's not a blood test, but the antibody test is a blood test, or you do both? Correct.
Well, the swab test is to to see if you have the virus shedding in your nasal mucosa. That's where the virus goes. That's how it gets in, right? The droplets. Remember, this is a droplet spread, not airborne. If we're airborne, we'd all have it.
Right.
The droplet spread, and you're looking for the actual virus particles, very, 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 very small. Can't see them even with a microscope. You have to get to like electron microscopes to find them.
Oh, wow.
But we can identify them, like I said, with these DNA-based tests, right? And some viruses are RNA, but RNA, DNA, it's just the building blocks of proteins at the molecular level. So that's what we're looking for. Once we get, and that's why they do that, to get as much on the swab to make sure they get it and they didn't miss it and call you negative even when you did have it, right? I mean, that's the trick with this. And then the antibody is your response, and it's later.
Got it.
That's what they're looking for people. And again, it's an unknown virus. This one, staying with this example, we don't know how this virus, how we react to it. We don't know if everybody's going to make an antibody. We don't know if you have an antibody, whether that means you can't get infected again. Because a lot of viruses, once you have the antibody, you can never get it again, right? I mean, that's why we get vaccines.
Right.
Because what we're doing is making sure that we have that'll keep that virus away. That's how we eliminated smallpox, basically in the world. It's somewhere hidden in secret labs, but that's only for evil governments.
Right.
To use. You've seen it. Yeah,
I've seen that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So then that would be used, I guess, so you can find out if someone has the antibodies. Could the antibodies be used in some way to treat people that currently have the virus?
Yes, in fact, it's one of the best hopes for treatment. The more we learn about, it's called convalescent plasma. It's basically, we want the people who have been exposed to or gone through the entire process. Some people being very sick, right, going to on a ventilator in the ICU, they recover. Then we test them. If they have the antibody, we take their plasma, just like you're donating blood. It's a similar process, but what we're really taking is about a liter of the liquid portion of their blood. Okay. And then we can use that. And this has been done and is currently being done to treat patients who are the sickest patients, right? Because you want to give those folks that are on the ventilator and may not make it. This could be their only chance. They don't have time to wait for a vaccine, or none of the other treatments seem to be working.
Kind of like a real-time vaccine, but you'd have to.
It's real time, and I've watched it work. Yes,
wow.
Here in Indiana, we've been doing it for a while. The blood centers are the ones who do this because they're the ones that are set up to be able to do a process like this. And the FDA has been great in speeding up what's necessary to do this safely.
Safely,
right?
yeah.
Because blood transfusion's always been a very safe, because of all of the restrictions, it's very safe.
So you're kind of set up for that.
We don't have the luxury of taking a lot of time to get there on this one. So we're on the fly with it. We're trying to save people with convalescent plasma, it's called.
So if someone finds out they have the antibody, is there a strength of the antibody? Like you can tell if you have a stronger antibody or not. But I think I just heard Tom Hanks talk about it, and he said he still has antibodies, but they're very low. So and he donated, because he's amazing, apparently. He donated his plasma. So would that be less effective because he has lower antibodies, or
exactly?
Essentially,
we're gathering that data. We don't know what the term they use is titer, right? Of the antibody. It doesn't matter what it means. It's just you could be a low titer antibody or it could be high titer antibody. But like I said, this is a brand new virus and a brand new reaction to a new virus. So we're learning and collecting all that data, and the testing keeps adapting. So you're absolutely right. There is a test, but many of them are just you have it or you don't. The antibody's there, but you don't go further. Like you don't know whether it's low titer or high titer. Now, the newer tests that are coming out all the time are something that you can visualize and go, well, the response is pink, so it's low titer antibody, or it's dark burgundy, so it's high titer antibody.
Oh, okay.
And in this case, presumably, the high titer is going to be better at fighting off the infection. So we choose those donors. And this gets back to, it was more voluntary before. Like if you wanted to go and see if you have the antibody and then maybe donate plasma, like Tom Hanks did, you do that. Like it's a one at a time thing, right? Yeah. We can't take care of 350 million people or globally one at a time. So what's happening now, as a lot of blood centers like ours here in Indiana, every time you donate blood, it's another reason to be a blood donor. A little plug there. Every time you donate blood, they're going to test every donation for COVID-19 antibody.
Nice.
And then,
donate blood,
as we identify people, you call them back and say, hey, would you be willing to come back and donate your plasma for patients in our hospitals? And if you do it locally like that, like Indiana, the blood center here in Indiana will take care of patients here in Indiana. And the ones in Iowa will take care of it. It's around the country doing that. It makes it amplifies.
Is there a website or something that someone can check to see? Like obviously there's Red Cross, you can donate your blood, but are there other outlets or places people can look to see where locally? I can put a link in there too.
Yeah, it's going to vary by where you are. Like here, I just said Indiana. We're part of a 4-state independent blood system called Versity.
Okay.
VERSITI. Versity. So if you went to versity.org and you were anywhere in Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, or Wisconsin, there would be sites all over each of the states that you could make an appointment and go and do that. But the American Red Cross also, depending on where you are, they're doing these things too. I just know more about what Versity's doing and the independent blood centers. All the same kind of thing. It just varies from state to state. So
you can donate your blood. You can find out if you donate blood, if you have the antibody, and then you can donate your plasma if you do.
Correct. Right? And save lives. Either way, you're saving lives.
Well,
whether they're just using your blood
or
they're using your plasma. But now in the COVID-19 days, it's kind of makes people feel extra special, right?
I think this is making me want to go donate blood now, because I also want to know if by chance, because so many people that I know of had all of these symptoms in January and February, kind of before we heard about it. And they're thinking, I wonder if I had it, and for the most part, actually like 50% of the people did. My niece tested positive for the antibody, and she donated her plasma as well.
Yep.
Shout out to Arlie.
Yep. Yeah, and you just have to check, because while we're doing it here,
not every
blood center is doing that yet. I think it'll become very common because they've got the person and the blood, and they're all set up to do the antibody testing. But rather than make people say, "Hey, I want to do the antibody," like I said, the one-offs.
Right.
If they just test everybody. And again, we've gotten approval to do that without consent, right? I mean, it's not like we have to ask everyone, do you mind if we test this is a public health issue, right? So we're testing all of them. They don't have to give us their plasma, but they're already there giving us their blood. Yeah. It's likely they'd come back if they could save lives with their plasma. They'll come back.
And chances are, if you're willing to give blood,
they're already, yes, we already have them. Yeah, exactly. But we hope we get new donors this way too, to go and find out if you have the antibody. If you don't, you still help someone with the blood you just donated.
Right. You're going to get stuck either way to get tested.
The needle's going in.
Why not just leave it in a little longer and save some lives, right?
It's an hour of your life to save another life. Yeah.
Oh, well, I think that's great. I think I'll definitely put in some links at least so that people can check their local blood blood bank. What blood bank? What is it?
Well, yes, they are blood banks. Mm-hmm.
Blood banks.
Blood banks. Yeah.
Or Red Cross, or yeah.
Well, it's historically the reason they're called blood banks is because if you were going to have surgery somewhere way back, the hospital would ask you to get your friends and family to go and put some blood in the bank for your surgery in case you needed it, right?
So you put your own.
So the whole blood
in.
banking industry began from just hospitals doing it in the hospital in some room in the basement, and it grew into everybody needs this, so we need to have it be a public service, basically. So it's all not for profit and there for everyone who needs it.
That's so cool. All right, well, I'll definitely put that in there. So now you're in Indy, and what I know about you is also you really enjoy nice food. And
Yes.
this is something that we talk about a lot. And this is actually my first time in Indy, but you have some local places here that you like, right?
A lot of them, yes.
What's your favorite place to go out here?
Probably, a lot of it is most recent,
that
right?
Used to be open,
right? Exactly. I think they're hanging in there. It's a restaurant called Chiba, and and the interesting thing about them is there's one here in Westfield, Indiana, which is about 30 miles north of downtown Indianapolis. Used to be, the cornfields kind of place, and it's grown into it's just another suburb that's one of the fastest growing in the country, that county, and this restaurant has one location in Westfield, Indiana, and their other is in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, nice. So major cities.
Yes.
Major city, and then here.
Right.
Which
Well,
is becoming
the couple. The one, I think it's the wife has family here in Westfield, and thought this would be a good place to open up another Chiba, and she was right because it's wildly popular.
Really popular.
And they do it right. They know how to do it, and they have the contacts to make it happen, even in the middle of. Right. I mean, we're getting fresh sushi in the middle of Indiana.
That was my next question. It was about sushi in the Midwest, or is this considered the Midwest?
Yeah, it's the heartland, I'm Midwest, whatever you want to call it.
I've been driving across the country and figuring out what time zone I'm in. I wake up in a different time zone and confused. My body's so confused. But
people don't realize that anybody who hasn't been to Indianapolis or doesn't know Indy, we're a 3-hour drive from Chicago. We're 2-hour drive to Columbus, it's 2 hours to Cincinnati, and 4 hours to Nashville, and 4 hours to St. Louis, and we're in the middle of. You can get easily anywhere, and in fact, our airport now. We built a new airport about 4 years ago here, and for the last 4 years, it's been the best airport in the country by travelers. However they do those surveys every year.
However they do that. Those people that do the surveys.
Yes,
did the survey
thing.
Yeah.
Survey said.
Hey. So it's just about that time where I bust in and tell you about Pittsburgh Ketchup. All I'm going to say is hop over to their website for a sweet discount. That's www.pittsburghketchup.com and use code HungryStuntGirl at checkout. Again, that's Pittsburgh Ketchup, PittstonKetchup, the way you spell ketchup.com. And at checkout, get 10% off with the discount code HungryStuntGirl. Okay. Back to the show. Something I actually wanted to ask you, when you were younger, and I could be wrong, but you were kind of a chubby kid, yeah? When did you grow out of that? And because I know that historically in our bloodline, actually, we have very bad genetics luckily I took, the other side of my family's genetics there, but with cholesterol. So both being a little chubby kid and having kind of issues there. When did you grow out of that, first of all?
Well, I like to joke that I've always weighed the same amount. I've just gotten taller since I was one. I was short and round, and I just stretched out. But seriously, I always had the because I love food. Back to the earlier question, right? I mean, I love food, good food. But I learned over time to, instead of just eating for stress, you find other ways to deal with stress. I still like to eat, but I do things. Exercise, and now that I'm getting older, it gets harder. But since I was a kid, I started getting thinner when I started getting more serious about taking better care of myself. Right? You can still eat bad now and then. You can't eat bad all the time. Nobody should. But as long as you're exercising, whether it's martial arts, I got interested in martial arts.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. What did you do?
I did Kobayashi Shorin-ryu.
Shorin-ryu? Kobayashi
Okinawan
Shorin-ryu.
style. Yeah, I did that. I actually started that when I was at Duke.
Okay.
And joined the club, right? Again, just another way to meet people and exercise. I wanted something fun because I hate just running or the boring stuff, right? And I joined a club, and it was one of the best things I ever did. And then I did it for 4 years at Duke. And then when I went to medical school, I thought, well, it's going to be hard to do it, but I'll practice myself. So I built my own little dojo in a garage, one-car garage that wasn't big enough for a car. So I made it into a dojo. Yeah. And then on one of the first events that we had, kind of a social event with my other fellow medical students, one of the guys in my class had a yin-yang symbol on his shirt. And I said, oh, are you interested in martial arts or anything, just to get a conversation going? Yeah. And he said, yeah. He said, actually, I'm a second-degree black belt in Kobayashi Shorin-ryu. And I went,
perfect.
Right, because it's not as you know, it's not a common style.
Can we just become best friends?
But yeah, then we started working out together at the Y in the squash courts. We would work out. We would reserve a court, not play squash. We'd work out. Martial arts. And so I did that all through medical school too. And it's just, as you know, it's hard to keep up with. You've got to practice like anything else, right? You're not going to be a good golfer unless you golf a lot, or a good skier unless you ski a lot.
Sure.
I've lost all my abilities. I mean, in terms of not being flexible anymore, not remembering kata.
Remembering kata is something that, the less you do it, the less your brain, especially getting past 30, past 35.
Yeah, exactly. But that's good for focus and to your question, just for physical, you take better care of yourself.
So you did that through college, and then
I did that until I was really out in the workforce, where it became more difficult to keep it up, right? I mean, in any organized fashion, when you're studying or in that kind of environment where there's always people to work out with or spar with, or once you become an adult and you're going to work for long days of work, and it gets harder to fit in. I'm not justifying it, because you should try to find a way to fit it in. I just didn't. It just kind of drifted away from me. But I was at least already disciplined enough after all those years to not become the chubby boy again.
Right. At least food-wise. And I mean, you do exercise. I see exercise things around here.
Oh, yeah.
Like, at the very least, even going for a walk, or,
Exactly. We're active. That was what I was going to say. My wife and I are active. We do a lot of walking, and we go for bike rides.
Oh, yeah.
Again,
I did see bikes in the garage.
Not 50-mile bike rides, but bike rides. Then it's good exercise. Right. And then, we've got the pools, we swim, or, I do all those things at least to keep moving. Right. Just as long as you're moving, I don't think couch potatoes,
No.
I love a good movie, but
for sure.
Don't hang out.
You're very active people, and you travel, right? I mean,
we travel a lot.
Let's talk before March here, but,
Right.
Travel. Would you say you travel, like, how many times a year? I feel like you kind of go.
We
guys
do
get to go.
And it's gotten more and more the last few years, because I've started semi-retiring about a year ago. But we try to make time to go at least 4 times a year somewhere. I'm more of I'd rather take long weekends more times than take 2 weeks off. You know what I mean? I'm not a big, unless we're going to Europe or, those rare,
use the time.
Then you need the 2 weeks or whatever. But we do a lot of trips out to California, to see friends, family. And then we're active when we're there, right? You go to places where you walk a lot or whatever. Yeah. We've done that even in Europe. We go to a city like Rome. I don't think we ever took a cab, except from the airport to the city. We just walk everywhere.
That's awesome. Walk off your pasta and your wine.
And you can eat and drink more.
Exactly. I mean, I've been to Disney World a handful of times, and I wanted to see, I think everybody does this, or a lot of people do this, where they kind of track their steps and see how much they walk. And I went to Disney World, and I walked like 13 miles one day. I was like, oh, there's my dino turkey burger that I ate in the park.
There you go.
And I try to do, I went to Disney World for the first time after college, and I didn't understand the appeal until I went there. And I went around the world in Epcot, and I was with friends who are like me, and we're like, let's do as much as we can in one day. Did like a little schedule and really booked it through the park, drank in every country. It was wonderful.
Exactly.
Do you cook a lot? Do you guys cook?
We do. I wouldn't call myself a chef by any stretch, but we do like to grill, especially in nice weather, right? We use the grill more than anything else. Or we'll make lots and lots of different salads or stir-fried vegetables and things, because, and again, it's all seasonal. A lot of good food here in Indiana, not just corn. We got good soybeans too, so edamame is popular. But
preferably non-GMO, but
right. We like to. I'd rather cook something simple here than we don't go out a lot. Which the reason for that is it makes it more special when you do go out.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you keep it for we don't go out every night. That would just be silly.
True. And I know Tracy was, your wife was talking about doing a lot of smoothies and, staying, keeping that balance. It's something I talk about pretty much every episode is being able to have your pastas and your wine and then, starting your day with like a smoothie with, bananas and what was she saying? Spinach and almond milk. And I mean, it's delicious, but, trying not to kill yourself with calories and carbs and balancing it out with the delicious smoothie. Do you do smoothies?
I don't do them as regularly as hers. Like I like breakfast, right? Yeah. So I'll make myself, eggs or whatever some days, and cereal some days, toast some days. But that's just me. She'll make a smoothie. I always have some. Like I get a little glass of it because they're always tasty. Right? They're always, whether there's kale in them or whatever. She puts enough. Whatever, peanut butter and frozen cherries and banana. Frozen cherries, whatever. Whatever we have that goes in there. It usually ends up green. I guess that's the kale or the
I think you
spinach.
Put anything green in just a little bit.
It ends up green, yeah.
Then you do blueberries with it and it just turns like mud.
Right, it's the dark brown look. It's not attractive, but tasty.
Delicious mud, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I like the smoothies. I like to let her make them and then I have some.
Yep.
I don't like building them.
Yeah. It is quite, it's almost as not difficult, but putting together a meal because you're I'm gonna put some of this, and I'm gonna put some of that powder in it, and put some maca powder in it, or matcha tea powder.
Chia seeds or whatever.
The other question was I wanted to ask you. So you're genetically predisposed to high cholesterol,
correct?
And that's something that there are a lot of diets out there right now, like keto and which is very high fat, and I feel like a lot of people should probably test before they try these diets if they are maybe overweight and looking for things. Would your medical opinion, if someone is overweight and they may have a cholesterol problem, you wouldn't recommend that they immediately just start eating bacon and avocado all the time, right?
Right. It's a tough one because just to fast forward to why that works, if you get your body geared up to burn fat,
right?
That's the premise of an Atkins or a keto or, and then things like South Beach diet, all they've done is dialed it back a little bit to reintroduce some carbs and the right carbs and a little bit because balance is better than any of these things. Right. But for quick reduction, like a weight reduction, it can be done safely. You got to follow other things to make sure kidneys are good, drink plenty of water with those things. But so it's like anything else. It's not the answer because you can't your body will not sustain just eating fat. You can't live on bacon and alone, right? I mean, it just can't happen. So the best way to do it is to, over time, adjust your diet so that you get the right balance of those things. Right. Kind of like a Mediterranean diet or, so that you're getting whole grains, you're getting the other things your body needs because you need some carbohydrates. That's what our liver is about, storing carbohydrates in case you do starve for a while. It'll feed you it'll keep you alive for a while. So most diets, unfortunately, they can help you lose weight quickly, but they're unsustainable.
Right. There are some people, Thomas DeLauer and even, Ben Greenfield, there's some other dudes out there that have some really great info. If you want to live that kind of ketogenic, you want your body to be in ketosis, it's difficult, especially for women. I know it was just, certain women, but there's also, I've been also listening to Mike and Matt, the Wild Health guys. They have a website. I think they're in Kentucky, actually. You can get your blood tested with them, and one of the guys was trying keto for a while, but he had some, and forgive me, I don't know the exact diagnosis, but a predisposition or a genetic kind of defect or something that makes them more susceptible to heart disease. And living that ketogenic lifestyle, even though it should work for most people, some people it will actually be very detrimental. Your cholesterol will be, kind of through the roof and not so good for your heart. And so I think that I wanted to mention that too, because if you're not seeing a doctor, you're not getting your blood tested, and you don't know if you maybe have one of these predisposition. You're predisposed through a predisposition. I make up words all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
no, you're absolutely right, because that's knowing when you go to the doctor. One of the first things they do is ask you lots of questions, and about yourself, but about your family history too. Mm-hmm. Family history is one of the best predictors of what's going to happen to you. Now, again, it's not 100% because, as you mentioned earlier, you can balance out some bad genes with some good genes when the parents get together. But knowing what your predispositions are or what you're predisposed to, it helps because you can plan around that. And like in my case, you mentioned earlier, my hypercholesterolemia, which is just basically fancy long word for high cholesterol, excuse me. There are great medicines for it now, but everything has its side effects, right? And so you chase one thing, you got to watch other things. And to your point, doing it all with healthcare professionals is the best way to do it, rather than trying to figure it out. But yeah, all those things are good. Eating right and following what's in your blood, best way to do it. And we're getting better with genetics now too. So some of those Ancestry.com and those kinds of tests. I mean, there's a million of them.
I'm getting emails every day from them saying, "Oh, by the way, I think you might have this." Oh, great.
Right. That's the only. You read my mind because that's what I was going to say. There's good information in there if you're willing to have some uncertainty about it, because they're not going to say you're going to get breast cancer or you're going to do that. You're going to have some percentage of your risk may be higher than the other person. And then you get to the ethical questions, which we won't go down this rabbit hole either, but it's when do you want to know that information and what are you going to do with it? Yeah. Right. Let's just say they came up with a new test that said, we can tell you 100% whether you're going to have breast cancer or not. Would you do it? Would you do the test? When would you do it? When you were a 13-year-old woman or a 15 or 18, and then what do you do?
Then what do you do?
Then what do you do? So there's lots of, and then just one small example of information being good, but you have to know what you're going to do with it.
There's a movie like that. Well, I think there's a movie where you can find out. Do you find out how or some sort of government thing leaks out and everyone knows how they're going to die or when they're going to die? Yes. It is a little extreme, but it's an extreme version of the
same concept, right? Do you want to know, what's going to happen?
I mean, I suppose then you might want to get tested or something, maybe take a test that you wouldn't normally take. Is that the idea behind it? Like you find out you probably have a higher risk of breast cancer, so maybe you go get a mammogram sooner or something? Or?
Exactly. No, that's the way it should be used. That you're hitting right on that's like, that's why we do colonoscopies, right? And you don't start them when you're 20, you start them when most people might start having some problems. And if you don't have any polyps or it's completely normal, then you don't have to come back for 5 years, right? I mean, using that example, every test is different. It's going to give you some information that guides you. Maybe you need to change your diet a little bit, right? If you've got diverticulitis when you're right, then you shouldn't be eating lots of peanuts because they're going to give you flare-ups in your right. I mean, there's so much information out there. The more you know, the better it is.
Assuming you live a nice balanced lifestyle. And this has become a question that I've asked everybody. I think kind of it's a little silly, but also it's something I'm very passionate about, and that is ice cream, because I feel as though you can go any way with ice cream. You can even go, the salty sweet. There's one I'm going to talk about. I try to talk about a different kind of ice cream every episode, and people always ask me, "What's your favorite ice cream?" Well, it changes. So today I'm going to tell you there's an olive oil gelato that they used to have at Otto. One of Mario Batali's restaurants. And since then, I've been looking for it. But olive oil makes sense. Mm-hmm. A little sea salt in there, sweet cream, delicious. So that's my contribution to the ice cream conversation for today. But okay, I know you like ice cream because I already asked you this.
Yes.
And why don't you share with everyone what your favorite ice cream is and why?
Well, it's a tough question, as you already know. But I've given it a lot of thought since we talked. And my answer is going to be unusual because my favorite ice cream is probably vanilla. And the reason for that is because I can add things to it. Yes. And every time it will be different. I can throw strawberries in there or blueberries and it's so pseudo-healthy, right? I have added fruit, so it's better, right? Peaches, whatever. Or I can go with what you just said, and I can put salty peanuts in there, some Reese's Cups, little ones, or things like that, and make it chocolately good, right?
I think you just answered that question as one would answer if a genie could grant you a wish, you ask for more wishes.
It's that kind of thing.
But I'll let it slide. But that makes sense.
But if I'm vanilla than chocolate. I would going back to the easier answer would be I'd put Moose Tracks in the freezer every day if I thought I
If
could
you had
get
to
away
pick
with
one.
eating.
Yeah.
Yes, if I could eat moose tracks every day for the
What
rest
is
of my
moose
life.
tracks?
It's got all kinds of stuff in there. Little tiny kind of baby Reese's cups. And
my.
some fudge running through it. And there's some nuts, and I mean, it's
Gotcha.
a bunch of stuff.
So more like chocolatey nutty.
Chocolatey, nutty,
So
peanut
you
buttery.
prefer that too. But there's a time and a place for fruit in the ice cream as well, because
Yes.
I'm a big strawberry cheesecake fan, ice cream. But if you had to choose, you'd probably choose
That's if you forced me to choose. That's where I went with that one. That's why I went with the vanilla, because I can do anything I want with the vanilla.
Right.
That was a sneaky answer.
I'm a
yeah.
vanilla person as well. Also, I love a good soft serve ice cream with sprinkles. And recently, and I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but Fruity Pebbles and soft serve vanilla. I don't know what it is about it. It retains the crunch.
Nice.
I didn't expect it, because sometimes you put cereal in the milk, it gets soft, but in the ice cream, it stays crunchy the whole time.
I'm gonna have to try that.
I'm drooling. I drool at least once an episode. I don't know. Okay, so I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, if you had all the time in the world to cook something at home and somebody gave you all the ingredients, you can cook with Tracy or without, whatever. What would you cook?
I'd have to go to lasagna.
Lasagna.
A really good lasagna.
Would you make the noodles if you could?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. It would be a perfect lasagna, right? You're making the noodles from scratch, making the sauce from scratch, using the best meats in there, all of the good stuff. Super lasagna, extra lasagna. Extra killer lasagna.
Extra killer lasagna. Nice. I'm finding that a lot of people really do want to try to make the pasta and the sauce and let the sauce, or gravy or whatever, simmer on the stove all day.
All day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like grandmother used to make, right? My
Right.
Italian grandmother that came here from Sicily.
Right. I wish I was able to experience her cooking.
Yep.
I was not. It was before my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the second question is, until you semi-retired, you were working and everything, so you'd come home, or maybe even on the weekends you want to cook something quick because you want to enjoy your weekend. Is there something like super tasty that you make very quickly that you kind of go, or like a go-to quick meal that you guys make?
Yes, and it's easier in the better weather, because back to the grill. We were mentioning the grill earlier. Yeah. We have a thing we call Greek chicken.
Ooh.
And it's basically boneless, skinless chicken breasts with a little olive oil and this Greek seasoning that we get, this special Greek seasoning that's got everything in it that it needs to. So it's very quick. You don't even have to measure out a little of this and a little of that, because it's all in this Greek seasoning. So you just have to do a little kind of a rub on the chicken, put them on the grill, and depending on how thick the chicken breast is, 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later,
quick.
You've got it with a little salad on the side. And
do anything, yeah.
It's awesome.
Salad
Every time.
or
Juicy, wonderful chicken.
Greek seasoning, grilled chicken. I love it. So this isn't really a question, but kind of I guess it's a question. What do you guys, or do you do to kind of balance out? We were talking earlier about that I was trying to do yoga more, which is a challenge for me to do solo. I feel like without being in a room with people, just the energy is really hard for me. But do you meditate? Do you do yoga? Do you read? What kind of mental workout do you do for yourself?
Yeah, you hit it on the third try. The reading is, I read, especially now with COVID and working less, or at least being home. So like a call for an hour and then you're off for 2 hours and then another call or whatever. I read about a book every 3 days. So it just, and thank goodness for Libby and online libraries. And, right. I
didn't get that.
Instead of just buying books, right, left and right. But I do that too. I love books. I love holding books, like real books.
Yeah, physically.
But I read so much that the Kindle makes more sense to me, right? I can just, new book.
Nice.
So that's it's both an escape and a way to keep your brain.
Any good reads recently, like nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction? I
do mostly kind of murder mystery fiction.
Oh, fun!
Whether it's Agatha Christie or some Lee Child or one of the mainstream guys, because they're prolific for a reason, right? They're good. Yeah. They either a good character that you get stuck on, and then you want to read all the what are they going to be up to next, right? What's that character going to do next in the next novel? So I get sucked into that, and some of them become movies, right? That's why they're just good stories, and you have to think, because those masters, I think, are good at weaving stuff in that you might have missed if you weren't paying attention when you were reading the beginning, and then there's that twist, and that keeps your mind active. So I don't read a lot of nonfiction anymore, because I spent most of my life reading nonfiction, right? And anatomy and physiology and biochemistry. So
it's pretty funny. I spent most of my early years doing fiction and doing plays and things like. Well, some of the plays were historically accurate, but now I find most of my free time I'm either listening to podcasts, audiobooks, cross-referencing with the physical book. But I drive so much, I've just been doing a lot of audiobooks, and they're all. I think 99% of the books in my Audible right now are all nonfiction.
Yeah. So you've gone the other way.
Yeah.
Although I am reading, interestingly enough, I haven't read a nonfiction in a while. I'm reading right now. I'm in the middle of a book called The Librarian, which is about the librarians and the fire in 1986 in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles. Yeah. I mean, it is a landmark library, and there's a mystery in that. It's a true mystery, right? I mean, they still haven't solved a lot of it, but how that fire began, and over 1 million books either destroyed or just burned up or not usable after. But interesting. But it's all nonfiction. I mean, it's all real.
Yeah,
but it reads like a mystery kind of thing. It's well done.
Well, 1986, another big mystery is how the Mets won the World Series. So
there you go. Exactly.
I've been a Mets fan since before I knew I was a Mets fan. I think it's because I don't really care if I win.
That's right. Yeah. Right. That's
just
good.
Like for the game and the hot dogs. You just put on a good show. No.
I've been to Shea Stadium.
Yeah. What about the new city?
No, never. I was to the old Shea.
I ran a little 5K in this new the City Field, the new stadium, but I haven't seen a game there yet, and I don't know if I ever will now.
With this year, who knows what's going to happen.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. That was great. Kind of covered the gamut of things, and
my pleasure.
I got my questions answered as far as the food side of things. But I'm glad we got to touch on. Now, I'm not a doctor. You are a doctor, but not whoever's listening. He's not your doctor, so make sure all of this that we talked about, check out with your doctor. This is not, this is just general entertainment purposes and educational to make you guys go out and find out what's best for you. So please do that.
Yes, well said.
So thank you again. This was so much fun. I love you.
Love you too.
All discussions on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and are not meant to replace medical advice. Contrary to popular belief, Heidi is not a doctor or a nutritionist or an astronaut, although that would be kind of cool. Heidi, maybe you should be an astronaut.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. And if you could do me one super huge favor and click that subscribe button as well as clicking that 5-star rating, I would be so grateful to you. Support comes from sharing this podcast and ratings from people like you and helps keep this podcast afloat. So thanks again, and remember, stay hungry.